When we were talking last, I immediately thought of a conversation I had with Urs Koenig, who is a former United Nations peacekeeper. He authored a book called Radical Humility. And the common thread throughout that book is be tender on people, but tough on results. So that was always his leadership mantra throughout his career. And I feel like you kind of represent that. You were always tough. You always said you were the tough person. You took on your dad's way of leading. You said your dad was always tough, so you modeled that in your own leadership style. So being kind of the tough person on the outside, how did you strategically infuse empathy into your leadership style to make stronger connections with your people, with the people you were leading, despite the fact that you weren't maybe naturally leading with empathy?
Well, that's the part which makes me laugh because my first answer would be not very well. I definitely was pretty good at the tough leader and the results focused and the set a high bar. Come on, everybody, take the hill. That part I was good at that. And I was the bossy big sister. I definitely had no problem with that part of it. But I didn't necessarily let people in. And it was one thing when I was being the bossy big sister, because my sisters knew that I was going to be there for them no matter what. But when you're with a group of guys that don't really know you and think you're kind of cuckoo or crazy or just a pain in the neck, they don't necessarily feel that trust or that bond and that confidence. And I had some pretty tough experiences, both when I was in the military and much later in my career, where it was something you learn it and then you relearn it and then you learn it again. And I would say feedback, number one. Feedback is so hard to hear. I really love the coaching that I received along the way. Feedback really is a gift. You don't have to respond. You don't have to be defensive. Just take it. Let it wash over you and do with it as you will, including ignore it if it's just too much to take in or whatever. When you get feedback like that, and especially if I got feedback where I clearly had missed the mark or somebody was in pain and I didn't recognize it or didn't see where they were coming from, that went right to the core of my gut. Maybe I am an empath because that just crushed me. That idea that I hadn't understood the situation, at least from their point of view. And it might have been a little thing, it might have been a big thing. And it didn't really matter. The fact that you missed that on somebody that you really are sincerely trying to help feels terrible. And it really made me go, okay, how do I not let that ever happen again? How do I make it up to that person? Can I make it up to that person? Maybe you can't, but it influenced me and it made me slow down a little bit, try to listen harder. I love the question of humility. The leaders I admired the most were generally the most humble leaders I'd ever met. I wouldn't describe myself as a particularly humble person, but it made me try harder to go, okay, it isn't about necessarily being the best, especially if you're in a leadership position. It's about listening and figuring out what you need to do to help your team be the best, help that individual bring their best. And it's been a lifelong journey. I'm in a group, I'm on a board with people, and it's like, well, why is this not clicking? What do we need to do to make this work? What can I do to help that person? My first inclination is, what can I just go do and fix it? I just want to get in there, fix it myself. And it's a harder decision to say, okay, I can't fix that. That's their job. How can I help them? And it's a constant choice, I guess, Rebecca, is just thinking through that, trying to make it not be about me, trying to accept the feedback and grow from it. One time I got feedback from an employee who said to me, Mary, you were the hardest boss I've ever worked for. I worked harder for you than anybody. And sometimes I just felt like you were so hard on me, but I always knew that you were doing it for me, that you thought I could do more. And it was that last little part that saved me. I was like, okay, I am a pretty hard boss. That part I totally acknowledge, but it was a real treasure to me that he added that last little part, that he felt like I knew I was trying to make him be better. What's tough is when somebody doesn't want to be better, because I can't undo that part of me. I really want to be the best. I want my team to be the best. And if somebody's like, yeah, I'm kind of checked out, I don't really care about that. Like, you might not do well on this team. That's going to be a problem. The other thing I realized is when I wasn't listening or wasn't hearing, I realized partly it was because I had isolated myself. One thing that did help me to become a better leader was being willing to be more vulnerable and more open about where I was or what the mistake I had made. And that took me a long time. I wasn't very confident with doing that for years, much longer probably than I should have been. And when I got more comfortable with that and recognizing that was a strength to do that, not a weakness, that was a big learning point for me, and it helped it come more naturally. So, and I guess the last one would be I'd come back to bringing joy into it. Like if we couldn't laugh, it
Hmm.
was going to be hard to get back to things. So I think those would probably be the two big adaptations I've made, is not to take myself quite so seriously and to allow myself to open up about maybe what I'm struggling with or why I missed the boat on that or why I was too busy to pay attention, and then to find a way to help us start laughing together, and it makes it easier to work together.